police examining allegations of historical child abuse involving a group of powerful people in public life have launched a new investigation into whether anyone was killed. One alleged victim, a man who is now in his 40s, claims that in the 1970s and 80s, the paedophiles included senior military, political and law enforcement figures. He told the BBC that he was abused for almost a decade by the men and that they used fear and punishment as a means of control. Our Home Affairs correspondent Tom Simons reports.
London, in the late 70s and early 80s. A time and place receding into history. But the darkest stories from the past are returning to haunt modern Britain. And this is one of them. An account of boys picked up by chauffeur-driven cars and taken to meet their abusers.
They created fear that penetrated every part of me.
Nick, not his real name, has overcome decades of fear to give his testimony.
It started with my father. It started with quite severe physical abuse, quickly turning into sexual as well. And within a very short space of time, he had handed me over, or whatever you want to call it, to the group.
What sort of group was it?
A group of men, very powerful people.
Give me some idea of the kinds of people. Military?
Yeah. The other figures from law enforcement, other people from the political establishment.
Nick says it started in 1975 when he was a child and continued until he was a teenager. He remembers the abusers would send their employees to bring him to hotels and private apartments.
We weren't smuggled in under a blanket through the back door. It was done openly. They had no fear at all of being caught. It didn't even cross their mind.
Behind closed doors, he was present at what were called parties or sessions. He believes 15 or 20 children were used by the group and hurt by its members.
I've never experienced pain like it. I hope I never do again. But some of it was deliberate because they set rules that were just impossible to follow. So you couldn't help but break the rules on occasions, and you were punished for that, which some of them enjoyed.
You would like new witnesses to come forward?
People who drove us around could come forward. Staff in some of the locations could come forward.
But experts say the police will face an enormous challenge in persuading those abused to make themselves known.
Survivors often carry lots of things like we hear shame, guilt, embarrassment, all things that don't belong to the survivor. They belong indeed to the perpetrators of these crimes, but these crimes are like no other. They leave the victims feeling somehow that they did something wrong.
It's something that stays with you forever. It's destroyed my ability to trust because the memories never go. They're with you constantly.
Well, Tom Simons is outside Scotland Yard now and a difficult and sensitive police investigation ahead.
Yes, Sophie, the allegations that Nick is making are about as serious as you can imagine. So distressing, really, that we can't broadcast almost any of them.
So Nick, just tell me a bit more about the nature of the politicians who sexually abused you and other boys at Dolphin Square.
Particularly nasty individuals. One was probably a lot worse than the other. One was a former cabinet minister, and the other was just MP, but nasty, like to inflict pain, like to see us in pain. on a regular basis.
And what do you mean by they would like to inflict pain?
Both physically and sexually. As much pain, certainly one in particular, the more pain we were in, the better. And then we would be taken through into whichever room, you know, they were wanting to do things in. It would usually follow the similar type of schedule, if that's the right word, where we would be given instructions by the men that were present, and we would be performing, for want of a better word. And it could be anything, whatever they shouted out for us to do.
What sort of things?
It could be anything from dancing, singing, doing other things. Just depends on what their whim was at the time.
And when you were in this sort of group, would there be more sort of, as it were, serious instructions given out beyond dancing and singing?
Yes.
Tell us a bit about that.
We'd have to do sexual things. Again, just depends on what they wanted us to do.
And I know this is difficult to go through, but can you just give us a bit more idea about what sexual things you would be asked to do?
Kiss, touch, both touch ourselves or touch another boy.
And are you saying that politicians were part of that
Yes,
abuse?
yes, they were.
And would they be asking you to do things to them?
Yes.
As I say, I know this is difficult, but tell us a bit about what they would ask you to do.
Well, some were a bit more private. Some wouldn't want to do things in front of other people. Some were very much more open about it. And a common one was for us or me to give them oral sex.
So this was happening in a sort of group setting. Would there be, I think you referred to it as private time earlier.
Yeah.
Tell us about this.
Private time was afterwards. Usually there was a break, and then private time was purely that. It was one-to-one time, where they would pick which one of us they wanted to be alone with, and that would change. You'd have to be with a number of men before the time was out.
And what would happen during this so-called private time?
You'd have to perform various sexual things, but it would always culminate in being raped.
And is it your allegation that politicians were actually, you were actually raped by politicians?
Yes. Yes.
Including the former cabinet minister?
Yes.
Tell us what form, tell us a bit about how that would happen, what sort of abuse would take place in this private time.
Well, a favourite for a couple of them was to rape me and others over a bath whilst holding our head under the water for as long as possible.
Do you think you ever came close to dying?
Yes. Yes, several times.
What would happen if a boy was injured?
We'd usually receive medical treatment from a doctor that was part of the group.
The doctor was part of the group.
Yeah.
Investigation. The police have said today that they have received recent information that suggests there might have been at least one homicide, so murder or killing. A difficult investigation because there's the weight of public expectation on it. If they manage to persuade abuse survivors to come forward, it would be very difficult to reach back into their memories back 30 years in an attempt to find evidence. But the one thing to stress is that the Met insists it's taking this investigation very seriously, and that it takes, really after the Jimmy Savile affair, all allegations of child sexual abuse very seriously. But this investigation is in its early stages, and it won't be saying very much about it from now on. Sophie.
Tom Simons, thank you.